All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our payment options and loans webinar. We're super excited that you are with us. I'm going to give our attendees just about a minute to go ahead and everybody get filtered in. It does take a moment for everyone to log in and be able to access, so we'll give them just a minute, but we're really excited that you're here with us. I'm here with our Director of Financial Aid, Chris Summers, who's going to review some different options for you in terms of loans, and answer some questions. So we know it can be a really confusing process, especially if you've never done it before. So we're excited to give you an overview and get to your questions as well. I want to go ahead and point out the Q&A function here in Zoom. We encourage you to send us questions. You can start now. We're going to do a quick review first, but as soon as we are able to do questions, it'd be great to have a few in there. So if you have questions, feel free to send them. We will get to as many as we can today on this topic, and we're also happy to have you reach out to us in the future if you have more questions about financial aid, loans, your bill, or anything else involving attending Oglethorpe. We definitely want to continue having this conversation with you. So we'll do just about 30 more seconds. We still have folks filtering in. I don't think I introduced myself yet. My name is Kelly. If you haven't seen me on here before, I work in the Office of Admission. I will be monitoring your questions in the Q&A box and turning it over to Chris here in just a moment to give you a little bit more information. But we're really happy that you're with us. It looks like folks are leveling off here. We'll probably still get a few more, but I will go ahead and pass it over to Chris to introduce himself and give you some more information as we get started. So thanks again for joining us, and I will pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Hello to everybody who is attending this webinar. Like Kelly said, we're going to be going over some loan options and a little bit of navigation through Oasis and through your loan options, where you go to find them, the kinds of things that you should be thinking about as you're approaching your loan options. But first and foremost, as Kelly said, this time is for you and your questions. So whatever questions you have, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature. If it's a very personal question, then you are welcome to email either myself or one of the staff here at Oglethorpe, and we can talk about contact information when this is over. But don't feel like you have to get too personal with your questions. But as Kelly said, I'm going to start with just kind of a brief overview. Hopefully some of you have been able to see, I kind of did a static recording about loan options, and I know the admission office has made that available to a lot of you. Hopefully some of you have seen it. If you have seen it, I'm probably going to do a little bit of repetition here at the beginning to go over some of your basic loan options. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see it. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of bring up a sample student that we have here in Oasis. Hopefully all of you have your Oasis login information and have been able to use that to look at your schedule, to look at your bill, to look at kind of everything that we've got on record for you here now that you are enrolling at Oglethorpe University. So I'm going to use this sample to go over what most students are going to be looking at as their first loan option. Your first loan option is likely going to be the Stafford loans. Now the Stafford loans, where can you find those? You can find them in Oasis if you go to the financial aid counseling section and you click on My Awards. My Awards should be kind of an interactive listing of all of the awards that you've got here on file at Oglethorpe. So your scholarships, your grants, you can click on these for some more information about them if you want to explore. But if you filed a FAFSA and if you've been found eligible for federal student aid, you should have Stafford loans in your listing on My Awards. Now, the reason I bring this up in Oasis is you can use Oasis to accept or decline or modify the Stafford loans how you see fit. Most of you are probably going to have Stafford loans totaling $5,500 for the year, and you can come in here and you can accept them if you would like. You can change the amount. You can't increase the amount because Stafford loans are federally regulated when it comes to the amount you can receive. So you can't increase what's on your award letter, but you can decrease it if you want. You can decline them if you want, or you can accept the full amount that's offered. If you use Oasis to accept your Stafford loans, then they'll immediately show up on your statement as one of your awards to help pay your fall expenses. Stafford loans, I'm blowing right through them. I haven't even really talked about what they are. They're loans that are offered to a student from the Department of Education. Again, you've applied for Stafford loans if you've done your FAFSA. That is essentially the application for a Stafford loan. Your FAFSA tells us what you're eligible for in Stafford loans. If you accept a Stafford loan, then you are borrowing money from the Department of Education with the promise that you're going to start paying those loans back once you are done with school. If you're done with school when you get your Oglethorpe degree, then you'd start paying the loans back 6 months after graduation. If you go from Oglethorpe to graduate school, you'll continue to be what's called deferment on your Stafford loans until you're done with graduate school. Basically, 6 months after you're done being a student, that's when you start paying your Stafford loans back on a regular basis. Now, when it comes to loan options, you're going to see that some loan options have a fixed interest rate, some of them have a variable interest rate. The fixed interest rate, it's basically saying that whatever the interest rate is when you borrow the funds, that interest rate is going to stay the same until you pay the loan off. Variable, it's going to shift and change as likely the economy shifts and changes. Stafford loans they come as fixed rate loans. So whatever the rate is when you borrow the loans, you can expect that rate throughout until you're done paying them off. Currently, the rate with Stafford loans is about 4.5%, although we are at the point in the calendar where the Department of Education is going to announce the rates for this year's Stafford loans. And while they haven't officially been announced yet, it looks like they're going down. It looks like they're going down to about 2.75%. So if you're looking to borrow a Stafford loan for the fall, most likely you're going to be borrowing at 2.75%. The only other thing I want to mention is on the example that I have here, there's subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans. And the difference between the two is in the way interest builds. On the subsidized version, no interest builds while you are in school. The unsubsidized Stafford loans, the interest begins to build as soon as the money is sent to the school. Not every student's going to be eligible for a subsidized Stafford loan. That is also based on the results of your FAFSA. So I don't want to go over all this. I'm sure you guys have questions, and I mentioned a lot of this in my static presentation. Once you get past Stafford loans, then we start to look at credit-based loans. So start to look at parent loans, which are offered by the Department of Education, also fixed rate loans. I think they're going down to 5.5% or 5.25% for parents this year. Parents who are interested in the parent loan, apply for it. Parents, if your credit is approved, then you can use the parent loan to borrow whatever amount you need for the semester or the year. If parents don't want to be the ones borrowing the funds, there are also credit-based loans for students, which are largely going to be private education loans. Those loans are going to be coming from Sallie Mae or Discover or Wells Fargo or Ed America, or there are dozens and dozens of lenders out there, and you can choose whichever one makes the most sense to you. But with a private education loan, a student would go to a lender of their choosing. The student would apply. The initial decision is going to be based on the student's credit history. Most students coming into college, most dependent undergraduate college students, just haven't had an opportunity to build a credit history. So don't take it personally if you're declined students. Most of us, the vast majority of us are when we are college freshmen or sophomores or entering college. If you're declined for a private loan, you're usually given the option to add a cosigner, which would be somebody stepping in and vouching for you. If your cosigner is approved, then students, you can use a private loan to take care of whatever balance it is you need to take care of. There's another option called a student access loan for Georgia residents. I'm not going to get too much into detail, though if you have questions about them, if there are a lot of Georgia residents in this session, then I'll be happy to elaborate a bit more. The student access loan application is not yet open. It will be hopefully in about 2 to 3 weeks. When it is open, we'll be reaching out to all students who are eligible to let them know that that option is out there and that they can apply for it. So I'm going to turn my screen share off, although If it's going to be helpful to answer a question, I'll be happy to turn it back on. So that's kind of a brief rundown. Let's get to what you guys have on your minds. Let's open it up for questions.
Okay, so we have a question here from Mary. Can we pay them back as they are given to us? So I know you mentioned for Stafford Loans, students aren't required to pay back until after graduation or after they stop being a student. Can they pay them back or start paying them back earlier?
Mary, I'm going to find you on campus and get you a sign and a trumpet, so you can lead the call there. The answer is absolutely yes. There are very, 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 very few loans where you might have, some sort of, you may be de-incentivized by the lender to pay early. Most often, yes. Your Stafford loans, yes. You can make payments while you're in school. The more you pay while you're in school, the less of a loan there is for the interest to build. Paying while you're in school is not going to be required, but any payments you make while you're in school save you in terms of what you're paying back overall. The longer it takes you to pay back a loan, the more you end up paying back because the more time there is for interest to build. So if you can get in the habit of making small payments on your loan while you're in school, that's absolutely in your best interest. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Jill wants to know, when do we apply for student loans? So I know
Sure.
Loans, but yeah.
Yeah, so good question, Jill. Thanks for asking. Essentially, the answer is now. I know that right now, you guys, students and families, you're getting your fall bills. You're starting to look at what it's going to cost for the fall semester. I think some of you may have been involved in a session yesterday talking about billing. Basically, you would want to be applying for student loans right now. Let me restate that. If you are planning to use student loans to take care of your balance, now is the time to apply for them. The way that the process typically goes is your Stafford loans, like I said, they're probably already on your award letter. If you accept those, then those will immediately have an impact on your balance. Moms and dads, if you apply for a PLUS loan, what happens is the application goes through the Department of Education. They let you know if you've been approved, and as they're letting you know of the approval, they're also contacting us. Once we get that approved loan application, we can start to the process of getting that loan on your account, getting all the details finalized. Usually takes a couple of days. Once it's finalized, it'll be on your account and it'll be showing as some of your financial aid to help pay for your expenses for the fall. The same thing with a private loan. If you apply for a private loan, you go through the process with your lender. The lender eventually reaches out to us and says the loan's been approved. We use that approval to put a placeholder for your loan on your record. So from the time you apply until the time that it's on your award letter and on your statement. With a PLUS loan, it might be a week from the time that you apply until the time you see it on your statement. With a private loan, it may be more like 2 weeks because you're going to have a few things that you have to deliver to the lender to complete your application before it gets to us. So I would say that if you're looking at loans, now is the time to apply. I wouldn't wait until you probably don't want to wait until the deadline for payment for the fall. You would probably want to try to line things up a week or two before that deadline. So let's say you want to start looking at applying for your loans on or before August 1st. But I'll say that with a caveat. If you decide that the fall semester, you're going to make the fall semester work without loans, you don't need loans for the fall semester, and then things change and you feel like you need them for the spring, you can make those changes throughout the year. You can apply for loans throughout the year. Really, you can apply for a loan as long as you're enrolled. Once your enrollment is done for the year, that kind of signals the end of your ability to apply for a loan.
Okay, I'm going to just really quickly stop your video, Chris, because it's a little laggy. I don't want it to impact your audio, but I will turn it back on. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So, Don asks, when does interest start on the Stafford loans?
The question, Don, is going to depend upon whether or not you're using a subsidized or an unsubsidized Stafford loan. Real quick, the subsidized versus the unsubsidized isn't something a student can necessarily request. Basically, if a student files the FAFSA and we take the results of the FAFSA and subtract those out from the cost of the school and then subtract out all the scholarships and grants that you've secured, if there is any remaining financial need, that's where a subsidized Stafford loan can come into play. If there's no remaining financial need, then the unsubsidized Stafford loan comes into play. So coming back to it, question is, when does interest start on the Stafford loan? It depends on whether it's subsidized versus unsubsidized. The subsidized Stafford loan, the interest starts building basically from the day you start making payments. So that could be 4.5 years from now. If you're going to grad school, it could be 7.5 years from now, 10.5. I mean, but when you start making payments on the subsidized Stafford loan, from that day forward, the interest begins to build. On the unsubsidized Stafford loan, the interest begins to build from the moment that the money is dispersed to the school. So if you borrow $1,000 in an unsubsidized Stafford loan for the fall, we'll probably receive that money in mid-September. From mid-September forward, interest is building on that $1,000.
Okay. All right. Are there any private lenders that will lend to dependents with no credit history who cannot get a cosigner? So if we have no credit history and no cosigner, are there private lending options that you are aware of, Chris?
Gotcha. There are a few. There aren't very many, I'll be honest. There's a lender called 6 Up, like the number 6, the direction up. Some of our students have been able to secure a loan through 6 Up without the help of a cosigner. Now, I will say that I think the demand for that kind of loan has outpaced the supply of lenders a little bit. I know that 6 Up has, they're an example of a lender where they had such a positive response that they essentially ran short on funds to lend pretty quickly. So 6 Up is an example. I believe Ascent, ASCENT, Ascent also has a variety of a private loan that you may be able to seek without a cosigner. There aren't many options for private loans without the help of a cosigner, but there are a few. So you can find them out there. And like I said, I believe Ascent and 6 Up are 2 examples of places you could look.
Okay. Alicia asks, should we apply for double what we owe this semester for the whole year? So I'm guessing that's in regards to PLUS loans and private loans. Should they plan to apply for double for the year?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that one, Alicia. The short answer is, if you plan to use loans to take care of the year, yes. You may as well apply for the entire year. So if you're applying for $5,000 for the fall, if you apply for $10,000, what we'll do is we'll take that loan, the $10,000 loan, we'll allocate half to the fall, we'll set the other half up for the spring. And that way you've only done one loan application to take care of essentially the entire year. Now, I know one of the questions that we get from families is, Chris, what if something happens and I've taken out this loan for the spring and I can't attend the spring? Something happens where I'm not able to attend in the spring. It's probably a little different at a lot of schools, but at Oglethorpe, we only pull funds in after we get past the drop add period of each semester. So basically, we're ensuring that the students who are enrolled are the students who are receiving loan disbursements. If you set a loan up for the year and we pull in the fall half and we set the other half up for the spring and something happens and you can't attend the spring, we simply won't pull in the second half. You've just gone through the legwork early to set that up. So yes, if you're planning to use loans throughout the year as your solution for fall and spring, yes, I would go ahead and set a loan up for double what you're seeing in the fall so that you have funds for, like you said, fall and spring. Another thing real quick about that, until the funds have dispersed to the school, it's very easy for us to make changes. So again, if you've set the loan up for the year and we pull in the fall half and then something changes to where you don't need the loan anymore in the spring, we can cancel it. We can cancel the disbursement you've set up for the spring. That's not a significant problem. It's not very difficult to do. It's a little harder to do once the funds have been sent to the school. Because when they've hit your account, if we pull them off, then it means you've got to replace them with some other funds to pay the balance the loans have paid. But I'm probably getting into too many details here. The short answer to your question is yes. If you're planning to use loans for the year, double what you see for the fall, apply for that, and that'll take care of you for the year. Yes.
All right, so Sharon asks, if parents' financial position has changed due to COVID-19, would it affect student loans that would be available?
That's a good question. The parent situation and the availability of loans, I'll kind of talk about in two different ways. So, parents, if your financial situation has changed, as so many have as a result of COVID-19, you can always send us what we call a request for review. And if you can document exactly how your situation's changed, we may be able to take, another look at the student's eligibility for financial aid to see if that's changed. It may potentially change a parent's viability as either a borrower of a PLUS loan or a co-signer on a private loan. That's certainly possible. I have not heard any change in availability of funds to be lent for the fall and spring. I haven't heard of any shortage of private education loans or any limitations on PLUS loans. You'll still have, largely a lot of the same options that you did before COVID-19 happened. But again, if your family's financial situation has changed, please feel free to tell us about it. You can reach out at FINAID, FinAid at oglethorpe.edu is our email address in the financial aid office, and we can talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. So somebody put in here, student access loans have closed for 2020. My impression is that they haven't actually opened yet, so maybe they're seeing that it's not open. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, one of the difficult things in higher education is an academic year spans 2 calendar years, right? You guys are on the verge of beginning the 2020-2021 academic year. It's going to involve 2 different calendar years. I believe in every report and everything that I have worked with in my time in financial aid with the state of Georgia's aid system is that 2020 represents the 2019-2020 academic year, which is over. That academic year ended, back in May. So what you guys are going to be looking for is the 2021 version of the student access loan. From what we have seen on the financial aid administrator side, we believe that application is going to open in early July. And for the students who are eligible for the student access loan, because quite honestly, not everybody on this call, not every student at Oglethorpe is going to be eligible to apply for the student access loan. So we'll do a little bit of legwork on the front end, and we'll be reaching out to students who appear to be eligible to let you all know that, when the loan application is open and where you can find it. And I don't mean to be so vague, I'll elaborate a little bit. Student access loans are loans for Georgia residents who are eligible for federal aid. So you have to have filed a FAFSA and been found eligible for federal aid, who have unmet financial need. So if you have a subsidized Stafford loan on your award letter, you have unmet financial need. If you have an unsubsidized Stafford loan only on your Stafford loan, good gracious, sorry. If you have an unsubsidized Stafford loan on your award letter, but you don't see a subsidized Stafford loan, you may not have unmet financial need. So the student access loan is for Georgia residents who are eligible for Title IV aid who have unmet financial need. We will, like I said, go through our enrolled students for the fall, and when that application is open, everybody who's eligible.
Okay, I'm going to pause your video again, just here real quick. Clarification from Mary, if we do a request for review, could the loans and scholarships be taken away? So could anything be impacted negatively by a review?
No. The short answer is no. If you do a request for review and the request for review shows that you are in a better position to afford college, we'll just tell you that nothing's going to change. No. A request for review is not going to reduce a student's eligibility for scholarships or loans. A request for review would, no. The short answer is no. Now, I will say, some of you may have been selected for verification on your FAFSAs. Verification is a process where you haven't done anything wrong on your FAFSA. The Department of Education randomly selects probably about 25 to 30% of FAFSAs nationwide are selected for this process. And what it means is that we, as your home institution, just have to collect a little extra information to make sure that what's on your FAFSA matches, you know, what was on your tax returns, for instance, in 2018. That process has the possibility of changing your financial aid in the sense that if you said you earned $20,000 in 2018 and really you earned $120,000, that change could certainly impact the student's eligibility for federal need-based aid. But that's not a request for review. That's not what we're talking about.
Okay. Let's see. So in July, we could apply and it would be available for fall semester, question mark. So they're just clarifying they can apply in July and presumably they could still receive loan funds for fall semester in time.
Yes, absolutely. Short answer is yes. Yeah, if you're applying for a loan in July, you can absolutely still receive funds to help out with the fall semester. So what we are looking for on the tuition, you know, on the payment deadline date for the fall, what we're looking for is that you have either paid your balance net of financial aid, or you have secured enough financial aid to take care of your balance. If your loan has been approved by that date, we'll put it on your award letter. It'll show up as part of your pending aid, and it will impact your net balance. So if you have a balance of $5,000 for the fall and you apply for a loan of $5,000 and that loan's approved before the tuition deadline, then you'll be in good shape. And I believe, for those of you who were on the session yesterday, I'm sure you talked about this quite a bit, but I believe the deadline for the fall is August the 10th. So as long as you've got your loan approved by August the 10th, we will put it on your award letter by that date, and it will have an impact on your net balance. Now, I will say, if any of you, loans can be used to take care certainly of tuition, fees, room and board. They can also be used to take care of books, supplies, travel expenses, and personal expenses. So if you owe a balance for the fall of $5,000 and you go and get a loan of $6,000, you've got $1,000 extra to help you with books, supplies, personal expenses, and travel expenses. That is absolutely a possibility when it comes to loans. I mentioned that as long as the loan is approved by August the 10th, then it'll be on your award letter, it'll be on your statement, you'll be in good standing. The funds themselves, so Oglethorpe receives loan funds, I think I mentioned, after the drop add period of each semester. This semester starts September the 8th. I believe the drop add period is going to be, it's either the 15th or 16th of September, I think. After that date, we'll start actually receiving loan funds. So we won't start receiving the funds until mid-September. But as long as you've been approved for them, they will impact your balance. So hopefully that makes sense. And if not, then feel free to throw another question in the Q&A.
All right, so I know you just mentioned the August 10th deadline. Somebody did ask, what is the deadline for payment for the fall? So August 10th is the deadline to either pay your balance or have set up a payment plan. We do have payment plans. Somebody asked that too. Is there a payment plan if paying direct from the university? yes, we do have those of 4, 5, or 6 months per semester. And you can set one of those up. There's a link to that on our billing website, so you can certainly do that. You're welcome to do that for any and all of the semesters that you're with us. So you don't have to have paid the whole balance by August 10th, but you either have to have paid it or have set up a payment plan by that day. Would you like to mention anything else about that, Chris?
Um, Only that those options are not mutually exclusive, meaning if it makes sense for your family to make a payment out of pocket of $1,000, take out a loan. I'm going to keep coming back to $5,000 because it's a round number. So I know some of you have a balance that's higher, some of you have a balance that's lower, but I'm just going to use that as an example, as a nice round number. You can make a payment of $1,000. You can take out a loan for $1,000. And then if you want to set up the remaining $3,000 on a payment plan, you can do that. If you want to pay half of it and take a loan out for half, you can do that. You can combine those options however they make sense to you and your situation and your family, as long as all that is kind of set up and in good shape on August the 10th.
Good point. Okay. So here is, this question is a little bit long, so I'm going to read the whole thing. So all the funds from loans, even the extra funds for expenses, will be with Oglethorpe. How does the student access those funds for books, travel, etc.? So how does the student access the extra funds beyond what is owed to the school?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that one. So for books and supplies, what we will do is shortly after August 10th, my colleagues and I in the controller's office and the business office will identify all the students who have credit balances on their account. And we will communicate those credit balances to the online bookstore so that if you have secured additional funds, you can go ahead and access them early. They'll show up as a payment method in the bookstore. I do want to be clear, because this is something that we do get a little bit of confusion on. Being able to pay for books with your financial aid is possible when your financial aid exceeds your remaining balance, right? So if you owe the school money still, if you still have a balance over zero, you would have to pay that balance. You wouldn't have a credit balance to use in the bookstore. But the example that the person who sent the question gave, if you've got $1,000 credit, we'll tell the bookstore you've got $1,000 credit. You can use that in the online bookstore to make your purchases. And then whatever is left over come August, between the ad drop period and the end of the ad drop period and the end of September, we'll be taking all remaining credit balances and issuing those to the borrowers in the form of refund checks. So we'll produce a physical check to hand to you, so you can use that to pay whatever expenses you need to pay outside of Oglethorpe. I said specifically we'll give the check to the borrower because parents, if you're borrowing a parent loan and that's what's being used to generate this credit, one of the questions on the parent loan application is, hey, parent, do you want the excess, do you want the check to go to you or the student? So parents, you have that option. And then for students who are borrowing the private education loans, students, you are the borrowers. So in that case, the check is going to you. So essentially whoever's borrowing the funds that are creating the credit, that's usually where the refund check would be going.
Okay. Can you explain the federal aid entrance counseling program? I see it is required for those students who have never taken out a student loan. What should we do after that?
That's another great question. So for those of you who are planning to use your Stafford loans, before the money is sent to Oglethorpe, so again, we're going to be requesting these funds in mid-September, but before we get to that point, if you've said that you want to accept your Stafford loans, you have to do what's called a master promissory note, and you have to do what's called entrance counseling. So a master promissory note is basically, it's kind of a contract with the Department of Education saying that you understand this is a loan, you understand that you're borrowing money that you're going to pay back. It also goes through some of the professions. There are professions where, for instance, if you're a teacher, in a specific subset of schools, after you have had that job for a while, you can apply to have your loans canceled. Those kinds of things are in the master promissory note. You would sign that electronically at studentaid.gov. And you would submit it, and we receive that promissory note. We need that on file for your Stafford loans to go through. We also need what's called entrance counseling. Entrance counseling is almost like a quiz. The entrance counseling, it kind of takes you through, okay, you understand you're going to college, you understand you're borrowing money to help pay for college, how much is college, what kind of costs are you incurring, where are your funds coming from. It's essentially a quiz to make sure that you understand kind of your financial position in going to college, how you're paying for college, and then it's, when you leave, get you to kind of estimate what you think you may be making out of, making in terms of income out of college, and what kind of repayment options you're going to have on your Stafford loans when you leave college. So it's kind of a quiz to walk you through start to finish the financial obligation of paying for college and then paying back your loans. And that's also done at studentaid.gov.
Got it. Okay. When it comes to outside scholarships, how can I get them added to my financial aid?
Wonderful question. So basically, I know a lot of you probably have secured third-party scholarships, which is excellent. We want to make sure that those are credited as you're looking at your balances right now. So if you can send us documentation that you have been awarded the scholarship and how much it's going to contribute to your education this year, we will use that documentation to put a placeholder award on your account so that it immediately impacts your balance. We may not get the check, we may not get the funds until later in August or September or even October, but if you have been awarded that, we want to make sure that you are getting credit for it against your, on your statement as you're making payment arrangements. So send us, if the scholarship provider sent you an email, send us a copy of the email. If they sent you a letter, if you can send us a copy of the letter, that's great. Even if it's an email from somebody at the foundation saying, yes, I can confirm this person's been awarded our scholarship and it's going to provide X amount of dollars. Any documentation you have, send it to us again at finaid@oglethorpe.edu, and we will add a placeholder to your award letter so that you can see it reducing your balance right now.
Great, and hopefully we have a lot of those coming in because we have some awesome students. All right, so somebody asked, does our amount due listed under account summary include food and housing? It should for most people, assuming you have a housing assignment. If you haven't yet applied for housing or you applied after the deadline and you haven't gotten a housing assignment yet, then it wouldn't be listed there. But for most folks, it will be a line item listed, typically with your dorm name. And it does include your meal plan as well. So that's not an extra charge. So if you are curious if yours is on there specifically, you can definitely reach out to your admission counselor and they can check and make sure it's already on there. But for most folks, it is listed under their bill. So for the vast majority of folks. Did you mention anything about that, Chris?
Yeah, I would just say to help you guys troubleshoot immediately, if you open Oasis and you open your bill and you kind of go into the detail of your charges, you should have tuition on your account, which is going to be $20,440 for the semester. You should have an activity fee, which is $140. I can't remember if the orientation fee has been added. Your deposit will be added afterwards. But if you see an additional charge beyond tuition and your activity fee, the charge if there's a charge for room and board, it usually includes some small shorthand name for your residence hall. So it might have, if you're living in Jacobs, it may say something like JCBS and then a number. That's probably your housing assignment, and then it'll have a dollar amount on there, or it may have Trayer written on there, or it may have DEMP for those of you who are living in Dempsey. If you see a charge on there that has that kind of label, that is probably room and board. If you don't see it, you may not have been charged for room and board yet.
Okay, here we go. Can outside scholarships be added at any point in the year?
Yes, yes, they sure can. An outside scholarship can be added at any point in the year. The only thing that I would say here is if you have set up a payment plan and then you're awarded an outside scholarship afterwards, that's fine. You know, we can always go back and amend your payment plan to include, you know, your third-party scholarship, or if you have secured a loan and you get a third-party scholarship afterwards, then, you know, we can discuss your options, but there's no time limit, there's no deadline with Oglethorpe receiving scholarships. Certainly there are deadlines associated with applying for the scholarships. You know, each individual foundation or provider of a scholarship is going to have, you know, their own application process. But as far as us receiving it, no. If you get a fall scholarship and we receive it in December, that's great. We'll apply it.
All right. Are there any payments due this week? There's no payments due this week, although if you are setting up a 6-month payment plan, we do strongly recommend that you make your first payment this month if you can, so that we don't get to a point where you're ever having to pay 2 payments in the same month. So we do recommend, if you're doing a 6-month payment plan, that you are able to set that up and make a payment this month if you can. But nothing is due this week. A couple of people have been confused by their orientation fee, wondering if that's due now. That's just a part of your bill. You don't have to pay that separately, and it's not due earlier than everything else. So don't worry about that. That's not, you don't have to pay that before you can participate in the summer orientation or anything like that. Would you add anything to that, Chris?
No, that's great. No, I would agree. There is no, there's not a payment that's immediately due this week. No.
Perfect. I don't know if we'll be able to answer this one because it's a little bit specific, but I'll just throw it out there and see what you have to say. If my student has a little bit of money in a 529, do they send all the money at once to OU, or will they break it up so a student can use a little for each semester?
You know, I have to apologize because I think the answer to this question is going to sit somewhat with the holder of those 529 funds. I don't want to sit here and say and speak for the holder of those funds. I would honestly be a little surprised if you did not have the option to break it up. If you wanted to only withdraw a portion of what's in there this semester to try to spread it out, I would imagine that you would have those options, but ultimately that answer is going to come from the holder of the funds. I will say, typically when it comes to making withdrawals from 529 funds, what you'll need is either the student's schedule or a copy of the student's bill. I think you'll be able to get either one of those through Oasis, but the holder of the 529 funds usually just needs to confirm that the student has qualifying education expenses that the 529 funds can be, you know, used against. But as far as the ultimate answer, I think that's going to, like I said, it's going to be answered by the holder of your 529 plan.
Okay. This one's a little subjective, but they ask, do PLUS loans have a high interest rate? So maybe we can discuss the interest rate relative to other types of loans.
You know, sure. Agreed. It is subjective. I will say that the PLUS loans, education loans in general, are going to have higher interest rates than like loans on cars, for instance, or mortgages. They're going to have lower interest rates than short-term debt like credit cards. The PLUS loan interest rates are higher than those of the Stafford loans. I think I mentioned earlier that it appears that interest rates on direct loans, which are loans from the Department of Education, are coming down this year for the 2020-2021 year. The projected interest rate on PLUS loans is going to be 5.30% fixed. Now, I know that you probably can get a lower interest rate on a private loan. That is going to depend somewhat on the cosigner that's used to help secure the private loan. It's also going to be dependent upon whether or not the student seeking the private loan chooses a fixed or variable rate loan. Typically, The fixed rates with the plus loans end up being very, very close to what fixed rate private loans will yield. Usually the fixed rates associated with private loans are a little bit higher than what you'll find with the plus loan. The variable rates are almost always lower, but then again, with the variable rate, those are going to shift and change. The rate associated with the loan is going to shift and change as the years go on. So is it low? Again, it depends upon what you're comparing it to. It is going down. The plus loan rate is going down from where it's been. You may be able to find a lower rate with a private loan. But most likely, if you seek a fixed rate with a private loan, it's going to be very similar to the plus loan or a little bit above. But again, it depends upon the cosigner. So you can seek out both options. And we had a family contact us earlier this week. They did decide to seek both options. The private loan ended up yielding the lower interest rate, so they went with the private loan.
Okay, so here's a two-part question from Beth. I will answer the first part and I will let you answer the second part. If a student didn't get the opportunity to retake the SAT and I assume she means and they do take it later on, and they get the score required for Zell and Flagship 50, will those scholarships be rewarded retrograde? So I can address the Flagship 50 bit. If they are able to take SAT or ACT at any point before classes start and we're able to get that score, we're always happy to incorporate new information that we receive before classes start to add any scholarships. So if they're able to take the July test and they're able to get the score we need and that qualifies them for Flagship 50, that's great. If it's later than that, unfortunately we can't. It's just a policy. We can't adjust the scholarships based on testing information or high school grades. High school grades are different because they're set, but based on testing information after the fact. So if they do it over the summer, awesome. If they can't, unfortunately, we can't do it. But Chris, do you want to address the Zell Miller bit? I know there's some information on that that's been made available.
Yes, the somewhat recently, the state of Georgia came out and said that students can take the SAT or ACT all the way through the end of the calendar year to try to qualify for the Zell Miller scholarship. So if a student finished high school in 2020 and they have started their freshman year and they retake the SAT or ACT at any point before the 2020 calendar year ends, and that new score makes the student eligible for Zell Miller, yes, the Zell Miller scholarship would then replace the Hope Scholarship on the student's award letter. So I'm sure that hopefully I've gotten a chance to speak with a number of you either in person or at a previous admission event. So just to reiterate, a student cannot receive both Hope and Zell. A student receives one or the other. So if a student is currently receiving the Hope Scholarship and they meet the GPA requirement, if they've got over a 3.7 GPA in high school in their core subjects, and they fell short on the standardized test requirement, and they then take the standardized test at any point between now and the end of 2020, and they get over either a 1200 or a 26, 1200 on the SAT, 26 on the ACT, and they become eligible for Zell, yes, we will go back and replace their Hope Scholarship with the Zell Miller Scholarship. The Zell Miller Scholarship is currently paying out $2,808 for a private school student. Hope pays out $2,152 per semester for a student at a private school. So it would be a change of about $650 per term.
Okay. Where can I find the 7-digit student ID to apply for the payment plan that has been sent to the students in order to complete their housing application? They should be able to access it. Chris, do you know if it's also in their Oasis account?
It should be, yeah. I'm going to, I'm really sorry. I feel terrible that my video is unreliable. I wish that I was more personal here and not just my name in text, but I'm gonna look up here in the background. Yeah, if you log into Oasis, I'm going to kind of navigate across a couple of different screens here, but I'm looking at the financial aid homepage, and the 7-digit student ID number is on the homepage. I am going to I'm going to go to a couple different sections, but I think you'll find your student ID on a lot of the screens that you see in Oasis. If you see a screen in Oasis that has your name on it, meaning if you were looking at the account summary, excuse me, you're looking at the account summary page on Oasis, for instance, I believe your student ID is right there underneath your name. It should say Oglethorpe ID, and then there should be a 7-digit number that starts with a 0.
Exactly. So it's there. As if you have Oasis access, which you should, it's going to be there. If you just can't find it and are getting frustrated, all you have to do is reach out to your admission counselor. They can give it to you just like that. So text them, email, call, whatever you like, and we're happy to get access and give you that ID number as well.
I'll also say, sorry, Kelly, really quick. I know that you guys probably don't have these yet, but just for your next 8 semesters at Oglethorpe, once you have your Petrol passes, once you have your student ID number or your ID cards, your student ID number is going to be the last 7 digits on that ID card. So you'll always be able to find it there too.
Yes, and somehow over the course of 4 years, you managed to memorize that number. It takes a little while, but you will have that memorized eventually for convenience. But that appears to be all of our questions for today. So we really appreciate you guys logging on with us and asking questions. I'll plug a couple resources. As we briefly mentioned, Chris pre-recorded a session about loans for us, which is available in the Moodle page right now. So if you want to get any more detail, or if you're just want to reiterate any of the things you heard today, that's also available. It's about 15 minutes. We also did a billing webinar yesterday with our accounting manager, Teresa. That recording will be posted shortly, but I'm happy to email it to you as well. If you send us a message, we can send you that, but it should be available in a couple days on Moodle too. There's a lot of great information on the billing website. I did put the payment plan link there in the chat if you'd like to access it. But there's a lot of information there. And if you do need somebody to walk you through your bill, we are more than happy to do that. There's links in Moodle to make an appointment with your admission counselor. We can answer a lot of questions. And if there's questions we can't answer, we can definitely connect you with folks in either the billing or financial aid department. So please don't hesitate to ask us if you have any questions. Is there anything else that you would like to tell everybody, Chris, before we head out today?
Not in particular, but I know that a lot of you probably have some more personal questions or some questions. You're always welcome to reach out to us. finaid@oglethorpe.edu is our departmental email. My personal email address is my first initial and last name, C. Summers, just like the season we're in, csummers@oglethorpe.edu. I'll be happy to help. We are your financial aid office. We'll be happy to help you through and answer any questions that you have beyond this.
Perfect. I just put all 3 emails in there, FinAid, Chris's, and mine. You can reach out to any of us anytime, or you can send an email to admission@oglethorpe.edu if you don't know who you're supposed to talk to, and we will get you connected with the right person. We did record today's webinar, so if you missed any portion of it or you joined us late, we're happy to make it available to you. Please reach out with any questions, as we mentioned. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we will see you soon. We hope you have a great night.